Louisa.
You talked about the relationship with God and how like it's another bit of the universe within the universe, that you're limited to the sixth sphere, and then once you actually open your heart to have that relationship with God, how much more gifts and opportunities in the universe almost expands infinitely for all God's children.
Yes, but it's not a punishment. It's because without receiving some of the infinite, some of God, some parts of God, you're unable to understand the rest of the universe above the sixth sphere. So it's not a punishment, it's just a natural limitation of the natural human, that without the choice to receive something from God, you're not going to be able to learn more. And it's very important. It's sort of like another way of saying it, I suppose, or it's not a good illustration, but it is an illustration of a kind. Let's say you go to university. Fundamentally, when you go, it's a transference of a person's intellect into your intellect, isn't it? So when you go to learn at university, let's say you want to learn about how to be an engineer, and you go to university to learn, fundamentally the person who's teaching you is basically teaching you principles they've learned. And then they're giving you those principles through your mind, only unfortunately, not very experiential in university, just like it isn't in school, unfortunately. It could be, but it's not. But they are teaching you something just by transferring things from their mind, and you're open to receiving those things. So for this to happen, there has to be a mind, you could say. So when you go to university, there has to be a mind. I'll draw it as a circle. One person's mind, and that's your professor or your educator. And then there's your mind, so my mind. And something has to come from his mind or her mind to my mind in order for me to even intellectually grasp a thing. Isn't that true? Right? So there's a transference of something from their mind into my mind. That makes sense to everyone? Mm-hmm. And that's happening all the time on Earth, right? This is how most of us learn on Earth when we come to learn human things, right? So remember I said there's also a sensory part of it, so let's draw it as the senses, and I've got my senses. For learning to be really complete, I have to have a sensory experience as well about what's transferred into my mind. Make sense? Now, if I'm just going to university and I've spent 4 years there and I never get any practical experience, which many people coming out of university have never had, can you see there's a problem? Because I've learnt things in my mind that I've not had a sensory experience of. So of course I don't know it yet. I think I do. I finished university and I think, I know a lot now. But actually you know very little because you've experienced none of it. And this is what you learn after you leave university. So for example, the engineer, the very first thing he engineers usually makes big mistakes. Right? And the reason why is because he never had a sensory part of that experience when he was in university to learn about materials or their properties, and to actually see it being built and playing out in their day-to-day life, right? Then of course the other way we learn is emotional. And this professor, he might have some passion for the subject, although many don't, but let's say he does. Then there's some emotional transference sometimes to us, isn't there? To our emotions, which allow us to feel his passion and feel like, it's really interesting what they did there, that kind of thing. But if that's not there, then you leave university without that, and you only have that. And this is why many people leave university and never continue in that job they learnt for 4 years. Do you understand? Because there was no passion, there were no senses, it was fundamentally a waste of 4 years of their life of learning, right? Now, if you think about God, God's trying to do the same with you. He's trying to give you ideas, you'd say mind. He's trying to give you he's trying to transmit sensory feelings to you through your senses. He's also trying to help you have emotions so that you're immersed in an experience, right? He's trying to do that too. But most of us are trying to control, particularly these two things, immensely. We're trying to control how many emotions we have, how we experience them, and so forth. And we're also trying to control, our sensory experience, avoid pain, any sensory pain at all costs, and only get pleasure all the time. But that's not the way a child learns. So it's not, you're a child, so it's not the way you're going to learn either. You're going to have some experience that goes, oh yeah, that's not good, and then that one is good, and that's not good, and it allows you to select. Make sense? And the more of those you have, the faster you'll learn, and the faster you'll grow. So God's trying to transmit things to you besides your thoughts, besides your mind. God's trying to transmit these other forms of learning to you. But because the average person is so resistive to these other forms of learning, and often uses their mind intently to resist the other forms of learning, it now becomes very difficult to learn. So God's universe has now been created. If you think about those things and what God's trying to do, God's universe has been created for that immersive experience to continue for you for the rest of your existence. So to do that, your emotions have to get more powerful. They have to get more intensive, more powerful. Your senses have to get more powerful and more intensive. Make sense? And then your mind has to get more powerful, more intensive as well. Right? All of these things have to get bigger. So what I see on earth happening a lot is the average person wants their mind to grow, but wants their emotions and their senses to stay the same. Or shrink. Now, of course, so in that place we're saying, I only want to be taught like I was at university with my mind, and the rest of it I don't want to feel. And the net result of that is you're not going to like it. How can you? Because you haven't had any emotions and any senses to like it. So you're not going to like it. So it's very important to understand the way God created the universe for our immersion experience, because you start to love what you learn rather than hate it. You understand? You start to enjoy the process of learning, and the more sin you get rid of, the more historical pain and suffering that you've stored that you get rid of, the more beautiful the experience becomes of learning. So the only reason why learning is not a beautiful experience for most people is because of our sin. All the things that we've chosen to do anti-love, and one of those things is to be anti-learning, and to be anti-experience, anti-sense, anti-emotion. These are all ways that we're shutting down our learning experience, right? So you can see one of the things that we've talked about a lot in all the teachings we've put on the internet and everything are about emotions, right? You can see why. Because unless your emotional experience is able to intensify, you're not going to enjoy things more and more and more and more. All you're going to do is either enjoy them the same, or if you shut down your emotions, you're just going to enjoy them less and less and less. So if the average person's experience on earth when it comes to their emotions is that they enjoy things less and less and less and less, because their emotions aren't capable of any intense experience anymore, because they've shut that down. And so now they enjoy everything less. Right? And have you noticed it's the same when you shut down your emotions, your senses get less too. What used to bother you years ago quite intensely and immediately doesn't bother you as much anymore. The sexual senses all get dulled. And this is why when you get older there's less sexual drive, because they're all getting dulled as well. There's all the sexual senses getting dulled, the physical senses, the feeling senses, the taste senses. So a lot of people when they're old complain, I can't taste anything anymore. The taste senses are all getting dulled, A lot of them say, I can't think of that anymore. I don't understand. I find it harder to learn. Their intellectual senses are getting dulled. Can you see? Yeah. And everything's getting dulled because the sin in us causes everything to dull. Right? We don't understand that. We don't understand that God created the universe for everything to expand, and we're trying to go, no, limit. Only and unfortunately to our own detriment. Make sense? Yeah.